Hello, listeners. My name is Rob, and I'm here virtually alongside my co-hosts Noah.
Hello.
And Em.
Hi.
The regular cast of Fax Machine, a podcast by and for people who are curious about everything, but especially the things that make them laugh. And today, I am very pleased to welcome our special guest, Moiya McTier.
Woo.
Hello.
Yay.
Hey.
Welcome.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Moiya is an astrophysicist and folklorist, and Moiya, we're really excited to have you join the podcast. Tell us a little bit about what it's like to be an astrophysicist and a folklorist. I think that's you have a unique perspective.
Yeah, probably. I'm the only one I've ever met. It basically means that I read a lot of fantasy and I don't consume much science fiction because so much of it is space-based that it feels like work when I watch it.
Okay, too close to home.
Too close. And
Too far from home, really.
much of it is bad. So yeah. That's what it means.
So are you like the worst person to go to Star Wars with?
Oh, absolutely. When like a few months after Gravity came out, or like when it came out on DVD, I watched it with my college roommate's family, and they still call it the movie that Moiya ruined, and they won't put on sci-fi when I go to their house anymore.
Really? You ruined it and not Sandra Bullock?
Fair. Fair. I was merely the conduit through which the ruinous language was translated to her family.
Ruinous language. That's like, I feel like that's like when you curse someone or put a hex on them.
Yeah.
So appropriate for
I think
this
that's
episode.
foreshadowing, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Foreshadowing, a dramatic device when an important plot point is mentioned early in the story to be returned to in a more significant way.
First fact of the episode.
First vocab word.
This is a great educational podcast. Way to go, guys. And speaking of podcasts, Moiya, I wanted to bring up that you are the host of Exolore, which was a live show, storytelling, planet building show, and is now available in podcast form.
Yes, it is. Yeah, in every episode, I invite 3 guests to help me imagine what the life and culture might be like on a different alien planet each time. We just covered a planet that has an eccentric orbit. We've also done a super volcanically active world. And there are so many types of planets that I can't imagine running out of episodes.
I was just going to say, it's such an interesting listen, because when you at the surface think of, a volcanic planet, like you have a picture and most people I think move on, but the depth that you guys get into describing the culture, like what kind of language habits they have, like what kind of architecture their underground tunnel systems are, it's like really awesome how much detail you put into making this world real.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, so much of it comes from the guests. Noah was a guest on my Asteroid Impacts World episode, where we created a race of mole people. It was awesome.
They're like, mole/beetle people.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That had it was the ritual scarification tattoos so they could rub up against each other and communicate what their tattoos were was my favorite part.
Yeah. I liked the underground organs that they would carve out of the rock.
Yes.
That
of
was
all their
fun.
tunnels, it was like a giant earth organ.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Good times.
That's super cool. So definitely when you're done listening to Fax Machine today, go on over to Exolore and send some listens their way.
Thank you. I'd appreciate it.
Okay, so today we're not talking about faraway worlds, though, but we are talking about what may seem like an alien landscape here on Earth. As the summer months roll in, we wanted to celebrate a country synonymous with summer, Iceland. So each of Noah, Em, and Moiya will bring you one incredibly Icelandic fact, and I'll finish things up with a pub-style trivia quiz loosely inspired by the theme. And so with no further ado, let's get things started with Noah.
This week I learned that 1 in 10 Icelanders will write a book, which is pretty impressive.
Damn.
There's actually a saying in Iceland, and I'm going to do it in my best Icelandic accent. Adganga med baki maganum, which supposedly means everyone gives birth to a book. And it's really interesting, actually, because it's literally translated as everyone has a book in their stomach, which so basically means everyone is pregnant with a book.
I associate much more strongly with the second than the first, because I definitely feel like the beginnings of a book is in my stomach, but I'm never giving birth to one.
Oh, you meant like that you could come out with one, not that you, like, some people say things like, oh, I devour reading material.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I thought you were going, Rob.
I can picture after reading like a lot of books, like after you're very full of food, you're going to have a food baby. It's like, oh man, I just like tore through War and Peace. I have such a book baby right now.
That's what you get if you want to write like a recipe book, like a cookbook.
Oh, there we go.
A food comma. But so I read this really interesting article on BBC.com about this, and some of the quotes from it are just amazing. Like when novelist Kristin Eiriksdottir was asked whether it gets competitive with all the other authors that are on the island, to which she replied, yes, especially as I live with my mother and partner, who are also full-time writers.
Wow.
But it's okay, though, because she goes on to say, we try to publish in alternate years so we do not compete too much.
I'm glad they've thought it out.
I mean, that's how... Yeah, I mean, it's like they schedule them, so it's okay. Another great quote from the same article, this time from Agla Magnusdottir, quote, writers are respected here, they live well, some even get a salary, which is nice. And then also, quote, they write everything, modern sagas, poetry, children's books, literary and erotic fiction, but the biggest boom is crime writing. And I'm not sure if I should be surprised by that, given that Iceland has one of the lowest violent crime rates of any country. And it makes me think, like, maybe they're missing something. Like, they need to fill that hole somehow.
With their imaginations.
Exactly. But without a doubt, more murders take place each year on the pages of Icelandic novels than on the pavement of Icelandic streets, which is probably how it should be. But there's another great quote in this article I want to tell you. This is from Sölvi Björn Sigurdsson, who goes on to put Iceland's literary culture in the context of its history. And he said, we are a nation of storytellers. When it was dark and cold, we had nothing else to do. Thanks to the poetic Eddas and medieval sagas, we have always been surrounded by stories. After independence from Denmark in 1944, literature helped define our identity. Which I think is a cool concept, this society that defines itself by the stories it can tell from its ancient past all the way to today. And I think particularly I got really interested in this mention of their long history of storytelling, and I think it's worth exploring a little bit. According to the medieval Icelandic sagas, which are prose stories and histories mainly from Iceland, but also from some other Nordic countries, Iceland was settled by Nordic explorers around 870 CE. They may not have even been the first Europeans to reach Iceland, which I was surprised to find out, as there are a few lines of evidence that suggest that there are actually some Gaelic Christian monks that reached Iceland over 100 years earlier. So that would be in like the mid-700s. And one medieval history of Iceland said that the first Norse settlers of Iceland even met some of the monks themselves. Although, frankly, it is a little bit unclear, and there's a lot of debate about that. But these, Vikings, Norsemen, whatever you want to call them, didn't actually stop at Iceland, and their stories don't either. According to the sagas, the Icelanders reached Greenland in the 980s and kept going and reached Newfoundland and set up what is widely acknowledged as the first European settlement in North America. And that would have been, I think, just a few years later, so still in the 980s. And they certainly, in both places, interacted with the indigenous people present there. For example, the Beothuk, and then the people known as the Proto-Inuits. And this is the part I'm most interested in, because we not only have the Icelandic sagas account of the contact between the indigenous people and the Nordic people, we also have stories passed down by the indigenous Greenlanders about their interactions. And it's so fascinating because, like, from both sources, there are stories of the conflict that you might expect, but there are also stories about everybody just kind of hanging out peacefully from like both groups. And two particular ones that I really like that I'm gonna briefly describe to you. The climax of those stories is usually some Norseman does something really dumb, like goofing around, and then usually dies. And then everybody on both sides is just like, okay, whatever, bro. And then that's like the end of the story. And so the first one is actually the story of the first meeting of the Kaladlit, which is the local indigenous people that was like telling the story, and the Kavd Dlunait, which is the word for Nordic settlers, which has survived today. This is from the Kaladlit perspective. Basically, they were just kind of going up the coast and saw this like settlement of people, and it was the first time they'd noticed that these Norse people were there. And so they came up to this large house. They were a little like, who are these people? This is a little concerning, as you can imagine. But according to this story, the Norsemen were just like, oh, hey, come on in. Like, and they became friends. It says treated them kindly and civilly. Later on in the summer, many more of the Kaladlit arrived, and the foreigners began to learn their language. There was one Norse person and one local person who became, quote, such fast friends that they would not be separated, but were constantly together. They tried to excel each other at different games and feats of dexterity, and their countrymen on both sides were greatly diverted as lookers on. Both being first-rate archers, their arrows always fell side by side. And you're just like, oh, this is a cute story of friendship. Yeah. But then comes this just ridiculous turn, because one day, the Viking one is like, okay, we're going to have an archery competition. We're going to put a little, like, target really, really far away. We're both going to climb up, quote, yon lofty hill, and we will both try to shoot at it and see which one of us can hit the mark. Then this quote. This is, again, from the Viking, to his best friend, out of nowhere. A friendship which was described hundreds and hundreds of years later as being really tight. He who fails shall be thrown down the precipice, and the other remain the conqueror, which is problematic. But the Kalalik answered, no, I will not agree to that, because we are friends, and none of us shall perish. But then it says the Viking persisted so long, his own countrymen said, well, let him be thrown down, as it is his own will. and then finally everybody was like, just do it, just humor him. So they go up. The Viking guy completely misses the mark, and his friend, the indigenous person, nails it like bullseye. And then the other guy is hurled down the precipice, quote, according to his own desire. And there's no reason for this to happen.
Wow.
Absolutely none. And so everybody from both sides walks away from that just like, what the fuck, dude? And they were like, everything was so chill, and they were having such a good time. And the second one is, I'll promise you, is much shorter, but it basically works along the same lines. And it's a kayaker from Arpat Civic came rowing up the Firth, trying his new bird javelin as he went along. On approach to this town that was mentioned earlier, he saw one of the people who lived there gathering shells on the beach, and presently the Viking guy called out to the guy in the kayak. He said, let us see whether you can't hit me with thy lance. The kayaker would not comply, although the other continued asking him. At last, however, the master of the place, so again, this is the Viking chief in that area, or like whatever, mayor, I don't know, made his appearance and said, since he seems so very anxious about it, take good aim at him. And soon the kayaker sent his spear in good earnest and killed him on the spot. The chief did not reproach him, but only said, it certainly is no fault of yours, since you had only done as you were bidden. And that's just the end of that story.
Wow.
So it's just like there's incredible collections of these stories, and it's like, this is so long ago. I find it incredible that like fully 500 years before Columbus sailed the ocean blue or whatever, there were Europeans living alongside as well as in conflict with native people on this side of the world. It's so crazy to me that this narrative of Columbus discovering the, quote unquote new world, even just for the Europeans, since the Icelanders didn't just show up and go away. Actually, the latest radiocarbon dating for the remains of the settlements from Greenland, particularly, is from as late as 1445. So there were citizens of either at different times, the Kingdom of Norway or of the Kingdom of Denmark. The ones in continental Europe. and they were sending back like tons and tons of supplies, like pelts and a lot of ivory and stuff like that. So it's not like these places weren't in contact with Europeans. And it's just, I don't know. It's just nuts to me that either nobody in Southern Europe was aware that Northern Europeans had been living on Greenland or North America for half a millennium before Columbus sailed, or that knowledge of their knowledge had been lost to history or suppressed or whatever. Anyway, my favorite thing about my birthday being on May 20th, it's the day Columbus died, so that's positive.
Nice.
Wow.
Anyway.
That's so shady.
So moving from that, I just felt like that was really interesting, especially stories we could get from both the subjects of those.
And it reminded, I was reading about Iceland, obviously, this week, and I just saw one thing about the national anthem that was composed by a famous composer in 1874. And it was he wrote in 1874, quote, to mark the 1,000-year anniversary of the first settlement. And I was like, okay. And then I had to stop and be like, wait, what? Which is, and like you said, there's probably even earlier settlements that are just like not considered like foundational to like modern Iceland. But that's like 874 was when they're like, we definitely had a town here now.
Yeah.
Like that's like at least the same lineage of people.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I want to sort of jump forward in the history of Icelandic literature to first the 20th century and then the 21st century, and that's where we'll end. And basically, so Icelandic literature developed throughout history and really came into its stride, especially like before and after World War II, which some would say the greatest Icelandic writer was Halldór Laxness, who won the 1955 Nobel Prize in Literature and authored many articles, essays, poems, short stories, and novels. But then today, this sort of like modern culture of reading and writing books in Iceland has this fascinating cultural aspect to it, and it's mainly around something in Iceland called the Jólabókaflóð, which is the Yule book flood, a literal flood of books that comes around Christmas time. And the idea behind it is that, I mean, first of all, you got to understand that 93% of Icelanders read at least one book a year. It's I think it's the third most literate country in the world, so they already like books a lot. And as I've already said, 1 in 10 people will publish a book in their lifetime. But one of the most interesting things about this like Christmas book tradition is that it's completely normal to receive as many as 10 books under a Christmas tree that are like your presents, and that after they've opened all the presents, just goes and starts reading their books, and they just read for like the whole night. And it is so attractive to me, the idea that just like this is the day where hundreds of books are released. There's a catalog from which you can pick every single year, hundreds of new books. I think it was in like 800 or something like that. People choose like the books they think would be most appreciated by their loved ones. And then they just have like a giant reading festival, the whole family, maybe like silently, but yet totally in community with each other. And I just thought that was really beautiful. And I really like the idea of a society that is so focused on books. That's or awesome. Stories in general. But I usually try to end on something a little funnier, but I was so touched by that I just wanted to share that thought with you. So Merry Christmas, everyone.
So it sounds like their Boxing Day is their booking day.
Yeah.
Nice.
Boxing Day.
It's got to be their biggest book baby of the year, right after Christmas.
I like the idea of living in that society, and I'm very proud that today we have someone who's actually contributing to making our society a little bit more like that, because Moiya, in fact, has written a book, and if I'm not mistaken, is in the process of writing another one. And before you tell us about it, I want to say that I'm in the process of reading your book, Lying Hordes.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Why? It's so good so far.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I've been afraid to look at it in the 4 years since I worked on it.
Well, I can understand that, but I'm enjoying it, so don't worry.
Awesome. Thanks.
So I think there's an interesting story about why you wrote this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I studied both astrophysics and folklore and mythology in college, and I was the only person in Harvard's history to ever do so, because when you study two fields, you have to write a thesis that sits at the intersection of your two fields. And everyone before me thought that you couldn't possibly combine astrophysics and folk and myth, and I came along and was like, no, watch me do it. I'm going to write a science fiction novel that's set on a planet that I'm going to study.
Oh, wow.
All of the science, or like as much of the science as can be accurate, will be accurate. And the plot of the novel was based on ethnographic research that I did in Hawaii about the Hawaiian sovereignty movement and the 30-meter telescope conflict.
Wow. Whoa.
And so that was my undergrad thesis.
That is so cool. And I can confirm it is a very cool read so far. I'm sure that it will continue to be good. I just want to say I have not completed it, but as soon as we're done here, I'm going to get back to it.
Noah's going to make like Christmas and just read for the rest of the day.
Exactly, yeah.
Make like Christmas. I like that.
This is my Jólabókaflóð.
This week I learned that by law, babies born in Iceland cannot be named Cleopatra, Zelda, or Lucifer. Yeah. So those are all names that were recently reviewed and rejected by the Icelandic Naming Committee, which ensures that names chosen by soon-to-be Icelandic parents adhere to Iceland's naming traditions. So I heard about this because every year there's always some buzz about the names that got rejected. There's this online newsletter called the Reykjavik Grapevine, which is all in English, and it's like a tourism magazine for Iceland, and it's just a delight. But they kind of give sort of annual rundowns of the names that got in and the names that got the boot. So to kind of talk a little bit first about traditional Icelandic names, so they're often hundreds of years old and date back to the sagas that Noah mentioned in his previous segment. And they also actually have meanings. So they'll comprise many parts of speech, including nouns, verbs, and adjectives, and sort of describe things that evoke winter or nature, like geological features, like volcanoes and geysers, and even tap into folklore and religion. So some example translations of Icelandic names, and they are just beautiful. Like, prepare yourselves. Rock of Thor, which, okay, that one's kind of badass, but still beautiful. Gift of the Sun, Ocean Wave, Snowdrift, Glacier, Folded Wings, Violet, which I realize is also a name in English, but trust me, it's much prettier in Icelandic.
Is it?
I think so. Though also from reading and hearing it spoken from an Icelander and then being like, I cannot do this justice. So I will be reading translations for my fact, but encourage everyone to look up the actual Icelandic words because they're gorgeous. But traditionally, so first names are chosen from, often from elder family members actually, so like grandparents, but surnames indicate sort of direct family lineage. So they'll kind of have this suffix at the end that is either patronymic or matronymic, though more commonly patronymic. So
can I interject just to say that?
Yeah.
So also along with the sagas, there's the Eddas, or like it's poetry, and it's thought that one of the thoughts about where the name Edda comes from for this like genre is that it means grandmother, and it's sort of unclear. I looked into this; it was a little unclear exactly how that exactly how it got that name, but it's really interesting that those stories maybe it's from like your grandmother
that are
telling
passed
you them or
down,
something.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you just said like names can sometimes come from elder family members, and that made me think of that.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. But yeah, so when you see in general, like Scandinavian last names that end in son, those are basically a construction of whoever person it is, their father's name plus son to indicate that the person is the son of their father, or on the matronymic side, the equivalent is dottir, is like the end. But in terms of first names, you can get a bit more creative, or at least they don't kind of fall into that very sort of typical construction. I also want to mention before I get into the committee, I read about an ancient naming tradition, which is basically sort of like an old wives' tale, but apparently in Icelandic culture, there's an old tradition to name your kid after someone who appears like in their mother's dream while she's pregnant with them. And this is done to prevent harm like to the child by not honoring that dream visitor, especially if they're deceased.
Better safe than sorry.
Yeah, exactly. But I also read that and was like, but what if it's like an ex-boyfriend? Or something like that. Oh, no, I really like to name the kid like Chuck. It's like, didn't you date a Chuck? Nope, totally not.
Wow.
Nope. Like, just
I ghosted him, or he ghosted me.
Exactly. Perfect. But if you want to give your kid a first name that doesn't already exist in Icelandic, and you're an Icelander, then you've got to submit that name to the naming committee. So it's composed of 3 Icelandic scholars, and they're composed of like linguists, historians, grammarians, and they'll pore over their own language and over historical records to basically deem whether this newly submitted name meets a few criteria. So one of them is that they only use letters in the Icelandic alphabet, and that they adhere to Icelandic grammar conventions. Makes sense. They should also show some degree of historical or cultural precedence, and also, reasonably and importantly, they shouldn't bring any harm or like difficulty to the child's life by their imposition. And one of the names I mentioned pretty clearly breaks that third rule. So all told, about half to 2/3 of names are approved that are submitted each year to the naming committee, and then added to their register of approved names. So right now, there's about 2,000 names each in the girls and boys category. So some sample names, that's it. Yeah.
Oh my.
There aren't that many of them, though.
There's 400,000 of them. There's 2,000 names each? That means there's like each name gets used 1,000 times.
Well, I'll say too,
Yeah,
they also
but-
achieve more variety by like very, very common names. People will usually have a middle name they also use equally with their first name as well to kind of differentiate, folks from each other when they have the same first name.
That's so much work.
Yeah.
I just want to say, since 1880, there have been almost 300,000 boys named Noah. So that's an entire Iceland.
Iceland of Noahs. And it's an island. It's like an ark full. It's an ark full of Noahs.
2 by 2. All of us are related.
There you go. So some examples of approved names in 2019 are Ray, Damien, and Mickey with 2 Ks. So they are names that are kind of familiar in other languages, but as long as they can be adaptable to Icelandic, then they can pass muster.
So Mickey was fine. Oh, Mickey, you are fine. You are fine. Hey, Mickey.
Blowing minds, man. Blowing minds.
Okay, please continue.
But regarding some of the names that I cited in my fact, so Lucifer was cut partly because the letter C doesn't actually exist in Icelandic, so that's a no-no right there.
Seems like
and also, it's kind of a mean name. I mean, it's probably for the kid's best for the kid.
Whew, good thing there was a reason for that.
And then Zelda was found to lack historical precedence because it is just a legend. Bear in mind.
Oh.
And also, the letter Z has not been used in Icelandic for the past couple of decades. So I like how they have kind of like a very like linguistic formal answer and then just like, also, no.
I have to say, I'm not comfortable with that degree of power belonging in any like body of people.
It's not even, I wouldn't even say that's the most famous version of that, because I would say probably the most well-known version of that kind of like language police is the Académie Française or whatever.
Yeah.
The French Academy, fine.
Yeah.
But they're also known as the Eternals, and I think and so basically they're one of the reasons that they're like the French language is like sort of so slow to adopt a lot of new terms because they want to protect it from mostly like English and English's predominance in a lot of like tech terms that are really relevant to today.
We are going to jump into that so hard. You teed me up. I'm knocking it off the tee. So that kind of brings me to why this is a thing in Iceland. So Icelandic names are preserved to kind of like maintain Icelandic heritage, sort of in a form of what's called linguistic purism, which as a term I was like, that doesn't sound great. But essentially just means that it's kind of like protecting a language from foreign loan words or also like adopting sounds from different languages. So the kind of basis of this, as you mentioned, Noah, Iceland was ruled by Denmark / like the succession of kingdoms that eventually became Denmark from the 13th to early 20th centuries. And this idea of linguistic purism emerged in the 19th century during the Icelandic independence movement. So to establish a free and sovereign Iceland, scholars at the time argued that it was necessary not only to shirk the rule of their Danish colonizers, but also all traces of their influence on Icelandic culture, including its language.
This is common in, like, folkloristically, this is common in a lot of oppressed communities where to fight oppression, you hold on to your folklore and like whatever will cement your identity as a group.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, so after Iceland gained its full independence from Denmark in the 40s, linguistic purism was first encouraged and practiced at universities, actually, and then over time extended to the government, the media, and larger Icelandic society. And this idea of preserving the Icelandic language as kind of this bastion of sort of national heritage and sovereignty is still pervasive, but it's also increasingly difficult to achieve, as you can imagine. Globalism is a thing. The internet is the thing. There's a lot of instances in our daily lives where we are encountering lots of other cultures and languages, and it's great, but for this particular instance can pose a challenge. But one way of sort of preserving Icelandic language then, besides outlawing non-Icelandic names, is coining new Icelandic words to describe new and or foreign concepts. So this is the job of Iceland's language planning department, and it's perhaps a more important job now than ever because Icelandic, as a language, is actually at risk for extinction.
Wow.
So one reason for this is that Iceland is relatively small. As we've established, it's 360K, is where we left off?
Yeah,
So,
roughly.
pretty small. So not many people in the world are speaking Icelandic. And that also means that it's a greater risk for a phenomenon referred to by linguists as digital death. So this is the phenomenon of languages falling into disuse and then subsequently erasure over time because they're not useful online. They're not used digitally. So linguists estimate there are about 7,000 languages at risk of this. And kind of the manifestation of this is just think of the languages that you see when you're faced with technology, like subtitle options, speech recognition languages, Wikipedia article translations, even of the most common voice assistants, so your Siri, Alexa, Google, Cortana, they're all collectively only duovigintilingual, which means they can speak 22 languages. And this was linguistic, so I felt I should learn a new word. So there you go.
Oh, well done.
But yeah, so if language is currency, then some are being devalued in our digital age.
It is interesting, though, because I feel like QWERTY does kind of sound like one of the Icelandic names.
I can know a committee who might not agree with you. But so into this situation, facing this digital death, enters the language planning department. So they're manned by a similar crew, and actually in some of the articles I read, like some of the same folks, like actual individuals, as the naming committee, but they have a different mission, which is to coin Icelandic words for foreign concepts, although nowadays often or just new technologies. So some kind of older examples of words that they've helped figure out were basically the Icelandic word for television, which is a compound of Icelandic for vision and throw, and computer, which is a compound from the Icelandic words for number and seer. And then more recent, they've been involved in coining Icelandic words for political correctness, for mansplaining, which I really enjoy because in their version, they swap man for the Icelandic word for ram. And I just feel like that connotes a really appropriate mental image of like mansplaining, where someone's just like shoving their viewpoint like into your face, correcting you when they have no reason to be. But it's not just technology and punditry that the language planning department has to contend with. They're also involved in coining medical and science terms, new foods, new fads, like just everything that you emerge and see trending on Instagram or TikTok or whatever people are on now. All of that falls under their purview to translate to Icelandic. But anyways.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you happen upon the Icelandic word for cronut?
Cronut could actually be a word. I think there's definitely
there's a C.
Viking.
There's a C. I guess if you replace it with a K, it could be okay.
Well, because there's a Viking king named Canute, which has a lot of the letters already there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Maybe
like
with a K.
CNUT.
It's just tough.
It was like
because you imagine how long it took the French word police to decide on croissant. And then I bet they haven't even accepted cronut yet over in France. So.
And then all the spellings of donut. I mean, come on. It's a mess. It's a mess.
Truth.
Yeah. Well, I'd be down to submit that and see what they say. But anyways, all of this is to say that for all the jokes that it elicits every year, the naming committee is a piece of a much larger effort to apply creativity and science and history and scholarship to save a language from extinction, and that's cool. And especially for a language that has a word for, specifically, the time of day when there is just enough light to see your sheep. Gotta preserve that.
It's so funny. I remember something I saw in like the sagas was they were talking about how like a newly discovered, it was either Iceland or Greenland. They were saying it was I think it was Iceland. It was so dark for so long in the winter, but in the summer it got bright enough that you could pick lice off of your shirt, and that was the phrase. Like it was bright enough that you could see the lice and you could get them. And it's like off the wool, presusally, which is the part I guess connects it to sheep.
I would say that's brighter than seeing the sheep. I think I like that we're getting kind of gradients of light intensity here. Actually, I just realized I had one last thing that I wanted to mention. Sure. I'll sneak it in. So one concern that I had, at least like with the idea of a naming committee, is how it could limit individuality in the way of gender identity. So like nouns and names in Icelandic are gendered, as are, those matronymic and patronymic suffixes that I mentioned at the end of surnames. But this is really cool, although admittedly Iceland has the distinction of having had the first democratically elected woman president and also the first openly gay prime minister. So I guess I'm not too surprised that they are awesome and ahead of the curve. But apparently in 2019, the naming laws changed to eliminate gender restrictions. So any name can be used for anyone of any gender, and permit non-binary citizens to use a different suffix, ber, in their surname to replace son or dotir. So ber translates to child of, so it is the gender-neutral form of that suffix. So I thought that was really neat.
I love that.
I wonder if that's just becoming like more and more. So everyone's gonna be ber at the end.
Yeah. That'd be neat. And then they can wrap that bit of Hamilton. They're just like, surname Burr, sir.
And now we're on to our third fact. Moiya, what do you have for us?
Oh, I have some very exciting stuff about the Icelandic Phallological Museum, commonly referred to as the Iceland Penis Museum, the only one in the world. And I learned a lot more about this room in the Icelandic Penis Museum that is entirely dedicated to folklore penises. So penises,
This must be how big is this museum?
It's
the biggest
it's
in the world.
It's surprisingly big. There's like a very long main room where they have a bunch of their bigger artifacts, like the whale penises, and then there are a couple offshoot rooms, and one of these offshoot rooms is dedicated to folklore penises, where they have full penises, but they also have like penis bones. It's really exciting.
I'm imagining this is like American Museum of Natural History with like the big blue whale hanging from the ceiling, but instead it's like a big ceiling with like a whale penis hanging from.
Which it's almost as big, yeah. They have huge penises.
I just love the idea that there's a whole room for what are essentially legendary penises.
That's the room that Barney Stinson spends all of his time in.
Nice.
Wait for
Yeah,
it.
it sounds like an Icelandic last name too, Stinson.
Oh, there we go.
True. Yeah, the committee would love that. Okay, so a little bit of background info about the Icelandic Penis Museum. It was opened in 1997, and at first it had only 62 penis specimens. The founder, Sigurdur Hjardarson, my Icelandic accent is not as good as Noah's.
Pretty good. It's pretty
Thank
good.
you. But Hjardarson was gifted his first penis specimen, just so we're clear. I'm going to try and see how many times I can say penis in this episode.
We're gonna have a little
Yeah,
counter.
please keep the count.
Yeah.
So he was gifted his first penis specimen at the age of 33. At the time, he was working as a headmaster for a high school in some rural part of Iceland.
Do you not consider him a headmaster if he's the head of a penis museum?
Oh, God.
Sorry.
I love that it did not take long to devolve to that.
We're going to be there for a while.
Yeah.
Knowing these guys.
So he was
More than you can say for most penises.
See?
I'm sorry. I will stop now.
Please don't stop. Please don't. Also not something you hear with most penises. Okay. I'm serious. Okay. Back to seriousness. So he was working as a headmaster at the school where the teachers would work as teachers during the school year, but in the summer they would work at whaling stations. And a couple of the teachers at his school gave him a whale penis as a joke one year, and he thought it was cool. So he was like, yeah, I'm going to try and collect more of these. And so sometime later, he opened up the Penis Museum. Now it has nearly 300 artifacts. And when I say artifact, I mean either it's a full penis or it's a part of a penis. And so it has nearly 300 artifacts from 93 different species of animals, including humans. And there's actually a documentary called The Final Member from 2014 that tells the story of how the museum acquired its first human penis specimen. I haven't watched it yet.
The final member. To grow where no man has grown before.
I haven't watched it yet, but it is available on Amazon and YouTube, and I will be watching it this weekend. So all of the specimens that you can find in this museum were put there for like scientific purposes, so that people could study the field of phallology, which is the study of penises. And so they have made a concerted effort to gather specimens from all of the land and sea mammals that can be found in Iceland. And they have pretty much succeeded, so that's exciting. They also have about 350 pieces of penis-related art and what they call practical utensils. I've been there. They have bottle openers shaped like penises, or like door handles shaped like penises. They have lamp covers that the founder of the museum made himself from bull testicles. There's a lot of really great stuff there.
So I thought you were going to say made out of himself.
No,
I'm very glad to hear.
no,
Yeah,
those
I really
those would be
thought-
tiny lampshades.
I really thought it was going to be the opposite, though. Like a bottle opener that was a penis, like or a baculum.
Like
or
a
something.
baculum, yeah. You could definitely
Just
carve a bottle
repurposing.
opener.
As a side note, when I was doing this research, the museum's website has a counter to see how many people have visited the site that day or that month, and I was the 1,144th visitor at noon on a random Wednesday, so no amount of social distancing is keeping this penis museum down,
Wow.
which is impressive.
That day,
Nice.
you were the 1,000,
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah,
Wow.
that day.
Nothing's keeping it down. Sorry, that
That's,
really took
yeah.
me a while.
Yeah, I was like, nice. Yes.
Thank you.
My
Yes.
brain was working on that one in the background.
Thanks, I worked on that for a while.
Gross.
Oh, we're children. But the whole point of this fact is really that folklore room. And so in that room, there are 24 folklore specimens, which have little plaques with actual backstories and information about how the specimen was collected, because it's a legit fucking museum. Like, they mean business. And so some of the specimens included are the kelpie, which is like a water horse, with the description, and I quote, adult, caught in the lake of Katanes in southwest of Iceland, 1998. Pretty tame. But there's also a merman penis, which doesn't make much sense to me, because that's the part of the merman that's like
It
fish.
shouldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what if
How does
fish?
that
It could be a
happen?
merman cloaca, I guess, or like.
No, it's a penis. It's penis shaped. It's a penis. And so the description for the merman penis is caught on a fishing line off the southwest coast in the late 18th century. Various things were made from the penis skin. That's the description. Just I don't know
So-
what things, but things.
But also not questioning that it's a merman penis. They're like, well, yeah. I mean, you reel them in
so what-
sometimes, and then what do you got to do? Yeah.
What was caught on the fishing line? The whole merman or just the penis? Is that really?
Came flopping out of the water. Ow, 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 ow.
I like to think that it's the whole merman, but the fishhook was in the penis. Yeah.
Oh God, it's so horrible to think about. I can't even envision the anatomy right now. I'm just picturing like a regular merman, sort of top human male, bottom part fish with just a human penis sticking out somewhere in the bottom half.
Yes.
And it's horrible.
Yes, but the penis is green.
Makes
It
sense.
would be
Right,
after that
of
much
course.
time.
They also have an Icelandic elf penis with the description middle-aged 1989. And it's important here to point out
89.
1989. That's when it was caught. So Icelandic elves are invisible. They also give Latin names to all of these folklore specimens, and the Latin name for the Icelandic elf is Homo sapiens obscurus. It's the hidden man. And so you can't actually see the specimen that floats in what they call pure Arctic water. It's an empty, it's a jar of water. There's not an...
They're having
okay.
fun.
They're
That's
having fun. Yeah, exactly. They're having
That's
fun. The founder of this museum obviously has like a really zany personality, but it's not just a joke. This whole folklore room actually does tap into Icelanders' traditional beliefs, many of which are still held today. So there's this common factoid that goes around that like more than half of Iceland's population believes in elves. That's based on a poll from 1998 that said that found that 54% of Icelanders claim to believe in elves. If you actually look at what that poll was asking, it's not great like survey work. The question was literally something like, do you believe in elves? And the only answers were yes or no. So there wasn't much room for nuance.
Right.
But if you dig deeper into Icelandic beliefs in magic and sorcery and folklore, you will find that probably not many adults like wholeheartedly believe in magic and in elves, but many of them are probably hesitant to deny the existence of these creatures outright. And that's because it's so baked into the traditional beliefs of the country that they have this view of like, better safe than sorry. Like, it's not going to hurt me if I say I believe in elves, but if they happen to be real and I don't believe in them, then I can be hurt. Like, that's dangerous.
It's like I'm an atheist, but I'm not gonna be like, may God strike me down if he exists. Like,
Yeah.
there's always a little
Yeah.
Standard deviation or error of the mean, I meant.
For sure. And the belief in elves is sometimes also used for environmental missions. So when people try to develop land that for a long time has been left to nature, like lava pools and lakes and roads that lead through them, a lot of the protesters who don't want that road to be built will say, you can't build a road here. Elves live here. And if you disrupt the elves, they will do bad things to the humans who live around here. So like, don't do this.
Or is it implied that they'll do bad things to like the like land developers, and it's really just like the people that live around there being like, yeah, the elves are gonna fuck you up?
That's a good question. I don't know. I read that some of the reasons people give for why you can't develop roads in certain parts of Iceland is because when elves are angered, they will do things like kill your crops or your livestock or just like steal some things from you, which is bad.
I see.
It doesn't specify who they'll steal from.
That's why the Iceland crime statistics are so low, is they just ascribe them all to elves.
We've cracked that mystery. I'm so excited.
I don't know how to feel about the fact that, like, if Smokey the Bear were an elf, people would take it more seriously. like people are not content to be like, there's wildlife here and you should care about it. But they're like, there are malicious spirits that live in these woods, and if you cut down this tree, they're gonna fuck with you.
I feel like we do have an untapped potential with Smokey the Bear, though, because he is still, ostensibly, a bear. Like, he's very friendly, but he's a grizzly bear, and I think he shouldn't let us forget that, and then his messaging might be more effective.
You don't set my home on fire, I won't set your home on fire.
Oh, wow.
That's how Smokey works.
That's like hard Smokey the Bear, and that's
Smokey is through with your shit.
That's a nice suburb you got there. It'd be a shame if something were to happen to it.
Might send my elves over. I like to imagine Santa as the head of a crack team of arsonists who take down people who don't respect the environment.
There's a story to be told here, for sure.
You're the one to tell it.
But Icelandic beliefs move just beyond elves. They also have a fascinating history with magic and witchcraft. And so the Icelandic word for magic is seidor, I think. It's S-E-I, and then that like curly D looking thing.
Yeah.
The hard C.
It's like a half D, half TH
yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So seidor. So men who practice magic were called seidmenn, men of magical ritual. And women who practice magic were called visendakona, which means women of science. So thank you for that, Icelanders.
I'm so here for it.
Yeah, because if you go back far enough, magic was just a way of harnessing the powers of the natural world, which we know as science, but they've called it magic or religion or God's work for thousands of years before we had the science to explain it. For the most part, Icelandic sorcerers practiced white magic or good magic, and they would use them to help others or fix small problems around the house. A lot of magic had to do with farming and livestock and like collecting milk or making sure that milk didn't go bad, things like that. Things that are important in a people who rely on farming. But not all of the Icelandic sorcerers practiced white magic. They have a very notable dark sorcerer called Galdra Loftur, who studied all of the forbidden texts. I don't know how he got his hands on them. They should have protected them better.
Just like Doctor Strange.
But even worse, he used this knowledge that he gained by studying the forbidden texts and did some scary shit with it. He would practice sorcery on his house servants, like on his chambermaid, and did some things that essentially are just torture. And he tortured his chambermaid until she was driven mad. He drove her mad, all in the name of magic. And then people caught on. He was driven out of the town, and he died by being thrown off of a boat. And the stories say that this dark hand just came out of the water and grabbed him and pulled him down.
Wow.
Yeah. One of the most notable and powerful of these dark rituals that not just Loftdoor did, but other dark sorcerers in Iceland would have done, was to produce the necropants, which is one of my favorite things about Icelandic magical rituals.
Oh my god.
So the necropants are a source of never-ending wealth. And I'm going to tell you how you can make them. I'm going to give a disclaimer to the listeners. This is not me condoning these actions. This is me just providing information. What you do with it is on you, and I am not to be held responsible.
We're just being very clear. Yeah. Being very clear to absolve us of any responsibility of what she says. If you do this, you will get rich, but you shouldn't.
Yes.
That's better than most pyramid schemes start, so I'm okay with it.
All right. So to make the necropants, a sorcerer has to make a pact with a friend, so at least there's consent involved. But you get consent from your friend to flay their body after your friend dies of natural causes. So you can't just murder your friend to make this happen. So it starts off pretty good.
Okay.
Once your friend dies, you have their permission to flay their body from the waist down, but you have to do it seamlessly without creating any rips or tears, which is very difficult to do.
Seems legit.
All right, so once you've done this, you then have to put on the pants as if, or put on this skin as if it's a pair of pants, and you have to steal a coin from a poor widow.
Oh,
naturally.
come on.
You steal a coin from a poor widow and you place that coin in your dead friend's scrotum that you're now wearing as pants.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if you also write a magical sigil on a piece of paper and place it in the scrotum with the coin, your scrotum will always be filled with coins. You will never, you'll never have to work again.
Guaranteed that by putting a coin in the scrotum.
But it's
multiply.
They'll multiply. It's a never-ending source of coins. No one ever talks about how awkward it must be to reach into this scrotum every time you have to buy something at the market.
Your coin purse.
This fleshy coin purse. But
I just want to jump in quick to say, for Fax Machine's sake, that this is not even the first time this spring that we've talked about hiding things in false scrotums.
Yeah, well, there's some scrotal recall happening right now.
Yes, good show.
But this is by far
Scrotal recall. That
this is
deserves
really
more.
good.
I will say, if you take the necropants off, your soul is doomed for all eternity.
Oh, that's some fine print right there.
Wow. Okay.
So you have to have them on forever.
Forever.
I mean,
and then you have to, like, they get passed down through families, so you would, like, pass them on to your children. And there's this weird ritual where, like, you take one leg off and they put one leg on, and then, like, each of your children.
oh, so there was a way to take them off before you, or this is a dead person.
Right. This is when you're still living, but you have to pass it on to another person.
It's time to pass on your birthright.
Okay.
And you say, son, I'm just like everyone else. I take my necropants off one leg at a time.
Oh my god.
Oh, so good. There are other just as ridiculous rituals that involve what Icelandic sorcerers called staves, or these very intricate sigils or rune designs that they would draw on pieces of paper or other things, and like sometimes say some words. And would you play a game with me where I describe the ritual and you try to guess what it does?
Oh, yes,
Yes.
please.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, great. I'll start off simple. So this one, you inscribe this stave or this sigil on the scalp of a horse using a mixture of seal blood, fox blood, and human blood. And then you recite a poem over the stave whenever you wish to use it.
That was hair growth, probably, right?
Oh, I wish.
If you go bald?
For the horse, though.
yeah, exactly. Like, because you want to do something nice for it. It's your main man.
Okay, so it's human blood, fox blood, and horse blood?
And seal blood.
Oh, it's seal blood. Okay.
Inscribed on a horse's scalp.
Okay.
Okay. And the horse is living. It's
Yes.
like a horse is just hanging out until you decide to actually recite the poem.
And so
They actually
And
don't
then the music
specify
kicks
if the horse is living, so I don't know if it matters.
But you would theoretically
Okay.
use this multiple times.
Yes, you can use it whenever you want.
Okay.
Is it
Okay.
context dependent? It will either kill your horse or raise it from the dead.
Oh, Noah, you're so close.
Oh.
Does it allow you to look a gift horse in the mouth?
Okay.
Does it prevent you from losing your voice? Going hoarse.
See,
Let's just keep going.
I
have
gonna,
no idea.
I was gonna guess it was for when you wanted to receive mail, but based on Noah being because horses
Because the Pony
presumably
Express?
delivered mail, yeah, and you might need a seal to travel across waters and a fox so the mail is quick, like speedy delivery. But
I love
All
that
of
you're
that-
looking for the logic in this. There is none.
yeah, but based on what you said to Noah, I'm gonna guess it's when you want to kill one of your neighbors.
Oh, very close. It is when you want
Neighbors.
to raise the dead
Okay.
Ah,
Or-
casual.
or exorcise a spirit or put a ghost to rest.
Oh.
Yeah.
This is
Multi-purpose.
multifaceted.
Yeah.
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 Seems like a great investment.
Efficient. Yeah, I like that.
The Swiss Army knife of enchantments.
I'll do one more. This one is a lot more complicated.
Okay.
All right. So
Because we were really good at the first one that you called easy, by the way.
I called the ritual simple.
Well, are you calling us simple? Or did I just call us simple?
I think you just called yourself
All
simple.
right.
All right, so this next one. The stave has to be drawn on a calf skin that has never been out under the bare sky. The ink that you use is made with water from within a raven's eye and the blood from the heart of a man and woman who have loved each other with all their hearts but have never consummated their love. You also have to draw this sigil with a water rail's feather. And then you have to sprinkle myrrh over the entire sigil. When it's dry, you have to go to a spring whose temperature remains constant winter and summer, and over which no bird has flown that day. And then you hit the water with this sigil, with the rune facing downward. And then
Which is on a calf? Like it's
On a-
still on the calf?
it's on calf skin, so you
skin.
remove
Skin,
the skin.
okay. Got it.
Yeah. And then you circle the spring 4 times counterclockwise. You take the sigil from the water and you peek through it.
Oh, to see
Okay.
your future.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
It's gotta be what it is.
You
Okay.
can. So this ritual will allow you to see into the future or past throughout the world and throughout time. So it's not even just limited to your future.
Wow.
Oh, I love that.
Okay, well let's start by saying it definitely doesn't. So I feel like the reason this is so complicated is that like they were like, oh, let's say Icelandic Moiya, you are a like woman of science.
Vicendicona.
Is there any? What was it?
Vicendicona.
Vicendicona. Is there any way that I could like look through time and space? And you're like, yes, but only if you do this ridiculously precise series of things meticulously correctly. And if you don't get it right, I'll be like, well, you messed it up.
Exactly. That's
Exactly.
like you're hitting the nail on the head here. That's exactly why magical rituals are so complex, because it then allows the whole community to preserve their belief in magic. Because if something doesn't go the way you expect it to, it's because you did it wrong and not because magic doesn't exist.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
So I'll wrap this up to say that the glory days of Icelandic sorcery ended in the 1600s during what the Icelanders call the Age of Fire, which is when all of the witch hunts were happening in Iceland. More than 200 people were officially charged with practicing sorcery or possessing dangerous magical artifacts, which I will note could include an oddly shaped pebble.
Don't you dare.
That's cause enough to be burned as a witch.
A lot of rivers were convicted of witchcraft.
Yes. But all of this information about these rituals and other facets of Iceland's magical history are kept safe in the Museum of Sorcery and Witchcraft high up in the West Fjords of Iceland. I've been there. It's beautiful. It's in this tiny little village called Holmavik. I highly recommend going there. But there are also parts of Iceland where these pagan beliefs are still held today. And so you can go to some farms in Iceland and practice these ancient pagan rituals and learn more about the culture there. When coronavirus is over, I might just abandon my life and go become an Icelandic pagan somewhere in like the West Fjords.
Well, we discussed it. We want to come with you and start our cult.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Moiya. All that leaves for us now is our quiz. And so first, I just have to tell you guys how hard it was to kind of figure out what this quiz should be. And so I looked up a lot of facts about Iceland. I was afraid that we would talk about them. So some of them we did, some of them we didn't. And so let me tell you what's not going to be in the quiz. The fact that there was something called the Cod Wars in the 1970s that Iceland engaged in with Great Britain, which is worth the Wikipedia look. It's very fun. Also, we won't talk about the fact that Iceland is the world's 18th largest island and the second largest in Europe, but it is. And we won't talk about Grujotagja, which is a geothermal cave, which is where Jon Snow and Ygritte consummated their love.
They could not be used in that magical ritual.
Oh, yes, unfortunately.
Yeah, sorry, they're out. But instead, here's what I've done. So I've gone and I've caved to those, pop culture heretics that want you to watch movies. And I've taken 8 famous movie quotes, but I have substituted essential and key words in them with their Icelandic translations.
Oh.
So, for instance,
okay.
if I said, frankly, my Keyuri, I don't give a fjandin.
Dear damn, right?
Yes, and so you would need to tell me the movie that's from.
Is that like Gone with the Wind?
Gone with the Wind.
It's Gone with the Wind, yeah.
Scarlett O'Hara.
Yep.
I haven't seen it.
1939, considered the most iconic movie quote of all time by many different ranking lists. So that's what we're dealing with.
Okay.
So 4 of the movies are going to be from the list of like 100 of the most famous movie quotes ever. So hopefully they're very recognizable even with the Icelandic. 4 of the movies will have happened to have scenes filmed in Iceland, which is very nice, but also means that they may not be the most recognizable movie quotes. So that's our difficulty scaling for this quiz.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay.
I spent some time on the Google Translate pronunciation function to prepare myself. Any Icelandic listeners, I hope that you just laugh. That's all I've got for you. It won't be great. Okay, so question number 1 of our, and again, it's not all in Icelandic because that's impossible. But that was my first thought. So it's just key words that have been translated in what I think is the proper conjugation, declension, in the way that they would be used if you were speaking Icelandic.
You just learned a whole new language to make this quiz.
I certainly did not. But I now know at least a little bit of the difference between a present participle and a noun form of the same verb, which we'll get to.
Good for you.
Yeah, it's
Nice.
It's completely not repeatable. I just typed different things into Google Translate, and I kept seeing the pattern that came up, and I picked what seemed like the most appropriate one.
We'll see.
Yeah. When we get a lot of Icelandic hate mail.
We won't be able to read it, though, so it doesn't matter.
But all right, question number 1 in our partially translated movie quotes quiz. Here's Horfa au you, Cracky.
He's looking at you, kid.
Nice. And the movie?
Is that Casablanca?
That one
Yes.
is Casablanca. I will say that
All right.
movies that have filmed in Iceland are blockbusters. There are very famous movies, so you'll know the movie for sure.
Okay.
But we'll see. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah. And actually, so I said Kraki. It could be Kraftji. I'm not really sure on that pronunciation. Because 2 Ks in a row, I think the rules change in Icelandic, but I didn't get there. That's for someone else to solve. All right. Okay. This second one, it was really hard to translate word for word. So 2 words in English became 4 words in Icelandic. That's my hint for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Number 2, just haltu afram au sinda.
So it's just, and then it's 2 English
Blank,
words.
blank. Yes.
The only thing I can think of is just do it, but that...
Yeah, same.
So this is a 2003 movie. It's a more recent quote. It is an animated movie. And the one that is closest, I think, of all...
Just keep swimming.
Yes.
Finding Nemo.
Yep. So,
okay.
So it's the opposite of halt.
yes.
Just continue to swim.
Yes. And that's actually when I typed continue swimming into Google Translate, I got the same thing. So
Oh, good.
that's
Okay.
actually what it means. But
Good.
so sund is swim and sinda means swimming. So I learned something about Icelandic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's cool. But just keep swimming. Very nice.
Okay.
Okay. This one I'm very excited about. Question number 3. I have Geirvurtur, Greg. Could you majolkow me?
I know it. Do y'all want to take a crack at it?
Noah, can you say the quote and I'll try and guess the movie?
I have nipples, Greg. Can you milk me?
Is it like I love you, man, or something?
Well, let me say, it is one of the greatest actors of all time saying those words, Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
And it seems like a very strange thing for him to say.
Oh, is it like Meet the Parents? Or one of
Yes.
those, or-
Yeah.
The original
Okay.
Meet the Parents movie. All right. Question number 4. This question is only 4 words. 2 of them are now in Icelandic. So there might be a little challenge, but we'll see. So question number 4 is Sindu me the peningana.
You know what this reminds me of? Is Moiya's book right at the beginning, where there's a lot of basically the person who wakes up like doesn't quite understand the language that the aliens are like speaking to them, and so like gradually gibberish words start being interspersed with normal words. That's what that sounded like.
Yeah.
It's here. Actually, here's a just to be clear. I actually have it up here. It goes Uchuga siadun off waking up gehebnuget gather korba to comfortable. That's what you sound like.
I told you we weren't leaving Earth, but we're in an alien world now.
That is from chapter 1 of Lying Hordes by Moiya McTier.
If I ever make an
Sorry, say it
audiobook,
again,
I'll
Rob.
have you narrate it.
Please. I'll do all the voices. All right, Rob, hit me again with that name.
Yeah, so-
that word, that phrase.
Sounds like you guys didn't grok this one.
Ooh, clue.
Well, question number 4 again. Sindu me the peningana.
Give me the money, or something like that.
Show me the
Show-
money.
Show me the money.
Yes, exactly.
That was purely
Which
based
is-
on your tone.
Yeah.
This sounds.
I tried to
familiar.
Tom Cruise it a little bit there.
Nice.
So that was question 4. So I'll tell you right up front, Casablanca, Finding Nemo, Meet the Parents, and Jerry Maguire, none of them had any scenes filmed in Iceland. So you've got a straight 4 of the final 4 that are going to have Icelandic influence. Okay.
Okay.
So question number 5. I'm going to get the accent wrong too. You see, Mr. Bond, you can't drep it, drama mina, but drama mina can drep it you.
I don't know the Bond films very well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Is there a Goldfinger?
that is a
something?
Bond film.
Okay.
So this one really lies heavily on the Icelandic landscape to the point where it actually takes place in an ice hotel.
Oh no, I don't know.
Okay. So I can give you the full English translation,
Okay.
which is maybe a little hint for the movie, but it's Mr. Bond, you can't kill my dreams, but my dreams can kill you.
Is there
And-
sleep in the title?
No.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, I don't know.
All right.
I give
I
up.
have no idea.
So,
Yeah.
sorry.
so this is Die Another Day.
I'm so bad at like Bond. I've never like Bond movies come up in trivia, and I've never thought, oh, I should just watch them. They're on Hulu.
And I mean, like, you don't
Now I need to.
you don't have to watch them. You can do what I do and like read the Wikipedia page and then be good for trivia. This one I did see when I was a kid because it was 2002, and then it came like it was like the Sunday night movie one week in like 2004. Okay, question number 6. I can give you. There are a series of hints for this one. Partially filmed in Iceland. Come on, you're just an ordinary Maur in a kapu. And
Dang, and
both of the
this
words
is filmed in Iceland.
part of it, not most of it, but there's a part that's filmed in Iceland. And the reason is this is a backstory movie, so it tells you a little bit about where a character comes from. And he is an ordinary mower in a kapu, which are actually the closest thing to homophones that we're going to get. The hint I'll give you is right before they say, come on, they say, Bruce, come on. You're just an ordinary mower in a kapu.
Well, it's clearly
So-
a Batman-related movie. Batman Returns? Begins?
Begins. Batman Begins.
Okay.
So that was the first of the Christian
Backstory.
Bale Batman. Yeah, and you're just an ordinary man in a cape.
Mauer.
Yeah.
Kapu.
Yep.
Okay.
It's easy once you know the answer.
Now I feel like I could answer that, yeah.
Okay, number 7. This one has words that sound nothing like their English counterparts. I've replaced 3 of them, and it's a fairly long quote, but there's enough, I think, tie-in that if you know this, like, it'll be easier. And it's supposed to be said in a somewhat, like, inquisitive or, like, are you serious kind of tone, which I hope that I can deliver in Icelandic.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the game skip that made the Kesselhop in 4 John parsecs.
Okay.
So it's a Star Wars thing.
Wait, so you said this at the beginning,
Yeah.
and that makes me think that it's not one of the originals, because that is not how they talk about it. That's actually, I think what Han Solo says in A New Hope is, she's the ship that made the Kessel Run. Like, so it wouldn't be like this.
Yeah.
I think that's Rey finding the Millennium Falcon in the first of the new ones.
Yes, that's
I don't remember what it's called.
exactly right. Anyone with the Star Wars
What
subtitle?
is it called? What's the name?
So this is 2015 Star Wars.
The Force Awakens.
Yeah, there you go. Nice. And so exactly like Noah described, Rey gets on the ship and she looks around and she's like,
This piece of shit.
this is the game skip that made the Kesselhop. Also, I should say it's spelled HLAUP. That's run, like a run, going for a run. Question number 8. I like this quote. I think it's a really obscure quote. I don't totally expect us to get it, but I think that the quote is worth ending on. And so this is a movie that has a cult following, and I'll explain why as some of the hints. But the quote is, the line between our Godsanger and our Sanalkan is fragile and blurry.
Is that like prayers? God singer?
It's similar.
Oh, Saints and Sinners? Is that what it is?
Ooh, I like that as an idea. But
That's the nicest way you could say that's wrong. I like what you said as an idea.
definitely not as the answer to my question. But
But it
Good
should
and evil?
be.
Is there something like that?
so it's not good and evil. So Godsanger, I think, has something to do with the gods. Mm-hmm. Maybe not like primary religious, but like the idea of supernatural powers. And then Sanlikan, I think there's no chance of getting.
Oh.
Yeah.
Great.
But so something that would be the opposite of like the Godsanger.
Can you say the whole quote again?
Yeah. The line between our Godsanger and our Sanalkan is fragile and blurry. And this was a 2001 movie that has a cult following. And it is the most recognizable female protagonist of an action movie of all time.
Kill Bill.
No, actually. But clearly here it is. That's the case. The structure of the title is the female protagonist's name, her profession.
Lara Croft,
Oh,
Tomb Raider.
Yes,
Okay.
Lara Croft, Tomb Raider.
Nice.
Who has become a huge internet sensation. If you go to Comic-Con, you will see many Lara Crofts, and has been voted the most recognizable and the most popular female protagonist of action movies. The quote is, the line between our myths and truth is fragile and blurry.
Oh, cool.
Myths.
Yeah. Which I think,
Yeah.
I didn't get myths.
I mean, Godsanger.
Yeah.
So I can maybe see the etymology. I can imagine myself to the etymology. But I think it's like a really neat quote for a folklorist episode of Fax Machine.
Yeah, it would have been great if...
After this, I'm just gonna go and learn how to say myth in every language around the world.
Yeah,
Smart.
never get
Yeah.
caught flat-footed again.
No, fool me once. Shame on me.
All right, but that's it.
Fool me twice, there's some sort of Greek god mischief going on here.
So that's our show. Thanks everyone for listening. Moiya, it was wonderful to have you on a guest this episode. It was great to get to talk about Iceland and folklore, and we hope that you'll join us again.
It was great to be here. I've been listening to your show for so long that I am excited to finally be a guest. And thank you for letting me come on and talk about things that don't happen in space. That was a new, exciting experience. You talked about exolore, so thank you for that. Yeah, I'd really love to help more people imagine fictional worlds. So go over to Exolore wherever you get your podcasts and check it out. It's EXOLORE. If you want to follow what I'm doing, in case I remember suddenly what I have going on, you can follow me on Twitter, where I post all of my things, and that's Go Astromo.
And from a Fax Machine point of view, fans, you can buy tickets for our July 1st live stream show with neuroscientist and Story Collider producer Dr. Paula Croxon now on our website and at caveat.nyc. You can always check out the Fax Machine website, faxmachinepodcast.com, and our Instagram and Twitter at FaxMachinePod, as well as Facebook, the Fax Machine Podcast. And if you'd like to follow us, I'm Sweatervest SCI, Noah,
at Arcs and Sciences,
and Emily,
at _EM Costa.
Fax Machine is produced by Rob Frawley, Noah Giberson, and Emily Costa, with editing by Noah Giberson. Our theme music is by Anthony Antonelli, and our logo was designed by Mike Zola. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.